Here's the host of today's webinar.
Hello, and just lost my title page there for a second, but hello and welcome to Extended DISC, today's 30-minute webinar, which you heard Amy say is going to be recorded. We highly encourage your questions. If we aren't able to get to them live, we will follow up with you after today's session. My name is Christina, and I am the training director here at Extended DISC North America. And joining me today is my colleague, Marku Kauppinen, president of Extended DISC North America. Hi, Marku.
Hi, Christina, and welcome everybody.
Well, today's webinar is, I'm going to be learning a lot from Marku, so right along with you, and we're going to be focusing today on the reasoning analysis, how you can use it to in predicting and supporting job performance. Just so you know ahead of time, we do interchangeably use two terms and terms I'm sure you guys are familiar with as well. So you'll hear us use reasoning analysis. You'll also hear us talk about cognitive ability tools as well. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's get a little bit of intro about what is this new tool that we're sharing with our with all our people out there.
Yeah, let's get started. And you mentioned it's a new tool. Actually, reasoning analysis or cognitive ability assessments, we've been providing in other parts of the world for the past 25 years, and we only fairly recently introduced these tools to North America, United Kingdom, and Singapore. But all of these cognitive ability assessments fall under the FinxS assessment platform. And those of who have used the platform probably are very well aware that there are many different tools from where you can choose to use tools for different applications. So this is just one of the tool sets that falls under the FinxS assessment platform. We of course have there all the different types of extended DISC behavioral assessments, different types of behavioral, what we call FinxS assessments, all of our 360 feedback tools, our sales capacity assessments, our surveys assessments. Did I leave anything out, Christina? And of course, the
capacity, I think,
sports assessments as well. So our clients have access to all of these different tools in one platform, so they can very easily manage all of the tools and the database. And you can also combine the results from, let's say, DISC theory-based tools with some of these cognitive ability assessments into one report. So it makes it very user-friendly, and it becomes a really organizational development tool. But the cognitive ability assessments, they really are tests. They measure, like the name implies, individuals' cognitive abilities in different areas. In fact, there are 9 different tests available to our clients that measure different things, and we talk about those in a moment. But in real life applications, you would really never use all 9 at one time. One is that you may not need to measure cognitive abilities in those areas. And also just from a respondent standpoint, if you were to use all 9, I guess there could be a situation where you need all of that data. It can be a little bit exhausting because these are tests and they are fairly challenging, and taking all 9 at one sitting would be a challenging task. I've done it and I was worn out, so I don't recommend it to anybody else. But they're typically used in recruiting, when we really need to understand what are the cognitive abilities of a potential employee, and also with existing employee when we are developing their career paths, thinking about placing them into specific teams, especially with project teams, when we really want to make sure that we have the mental horsepower in the team that we need in order to have successful outcomes, and also really help to place existing employees into right jobs to make sure they will have what it takes to succeed, but also making sure that they will not be in a work role that is not challenging enough, that will really engage them and really provide them the job satisfaction that I'm sure all of us hope that our employees have.
So Marku, I know you're going to talk about, these 9 different tools, and one of the questions I'm sure people have is like, how do I know which one to use? I mean, there are so many, and how do I start? Where do I go? How do I get started?
That's a great question, and question we get often asked. A couple of things. One is that we define all of these tools much more clearly than, let's say, abstract logical reasoning. What does that mean? Of course, we do define that, but we also help our clients, and often our clients already know this, but the starting point is really to really have a clear idea what the job requirements are. We need to understand what are the cognitive abilities that the successful employees must possess in order for them to succeed. So we work with our clients to help them really identify which one or ones of these 9 assessments are the ones that are most relevant. What I have observed working with our clients is that they kind of look at these assessments first, and they usually start with the existing employees and ask them to take some of these tests. And then they'll look at the output and compare those results to the job requirement, and then decide which tools, which tests are the most relevant for specific jobs. That really is the starting point. And we'll get to this in a little bit later in the webinar. Our clients typically create their own benchmark. They look at the existing employees to really identify what are the benchmark scores, because these are test results. You get a score on a 0 to 100 point scale, and we need to have some kind of benchmark to compare those results. What does score 65, for example, mean? It could be a great score, or it could be not so wonderful score, depending on the benchmark. We certainly do have global benchmarks, but in reality, the client's own benchmarks are most relevant, because when we have a global benchmarks, obviously we have respondents, there's hundreds of thousands, maybe probably millions of responses already. Those kind of benchmarks may not be as relevant, because you have people from different backgrounds, different regions, and of course, different countries all around the world.
Yeah, and you can see they're all 9 of them are listed here that are available. And like Markku said, you can use them as standalone, or you can use them in combination. Unless you are really pushing, we don't recommend that you use all 9 at once. I did ask Markku to just highlight a few of them, so you just get an idea of how the process works and what the results show up as. So the first one I asked Markku to talk about is the abstract logical reasoning. And then what I did was I screenshotted just a sample of the questionnaire. So can you talk a little bit about abstract logical reasoning, Markku?
Yeah, of course. And this is one of the most popular ones, because it measures the individual's ability to understand concepts and identify their relationships. And it's very popular in areas like construction, business development, information technology and programming. And also we see a lot of in business development. And like you see on the screen, it tells a little bit about how many questions that each test has. Each test has a different number of questions, and they are also timed. This particular test, abstract logical reasoning, has 30 questions, and the respondent will have 11 minutes to which to complete the test. And the reason for that is that we are looking for 2 things. One is we are looking for accuracy, that they are able to answer the questions correctly. And also we are looking for speed, making sure that they have the ability to answer these in a limited time. And when a person starts a test, they get instructions, and you can see that on the screen, but they also get a 1 practice question. The scenario is laid out, like you can see there and read if you would like to. And then there are, in this case, there are 5 different answers. It's a multiple choice format in this test. And then the person can select which one they believe is correct. In the practice question, it actually will tell you if you select the wrong choice, it's incorrect, and then you can try another one until you get the correct. So that way you can really understand what the test is looking for. And when you are feeling comfortable, hey, I got it, they click on begin. And at that point, in this case, the 11-minute timer will begin, and the respondent will have 11 minutes in which to try to answer all 30 questions.
Now you can do it in less than 11 minutes and then go on to the next assessment if you have another, but you have a maximum of 11 minutes.
Yeah, each test has a certain number of questions and certain time limit in which to complete the test.
So from those 30 questions, we are able to generate a report based on that. And this one is the abstract logical reasoning report, which related to the one Marku just introduced the questionnaire for you.
Yeah, and ultimately that you get a test score. Just like it reminds me of being back in school. You get a test score. I get a 85 on my test in math, for example. Well, here this person get a score of 33%. And by the way, the report clearly defines what abstract logical reasoning is. And then in the middle of there, it will give you the score. Like I said, this individual received a score of 33%. And then we also identify what a low score and a high score, what do they indicate in terms of their ability or what the low score may result in. Like, for example, low score in this case under abstract logical reasoning, it could mean that there's difficulties identifying important facts from non-important. They are not able to see the big picture and maybe focusing on details that are not really that important. Somebody would get a high score. They are able to identify those trends and identify any deviations and separate the important information from non-essential. So interpretation is very easy. Administration is very easy. You do not need to get a training how to use it. Really the important part is identifying which one or ones of these 9 tests we want to use for specific job roles.
Yeah, and I really like the description of the test result too. So like you said, everything is just clearly laid out. It's broken into very specific sections so that it's very easy to interpret the results of this report.
Yeah, and when we see a little bit later in this webinar, then we can compare that score of 33% against the benchmark. And that's where the real meaning of the results is revealed. How well did this person actually compare? For example, if we use our existing top performers, how well did this individual score against our top producers or most successful employees in that particular role?
Right. So the other one I asked Marku to talk about, I just picked another one that was one of our more popular ones, and that was understanding logical processes. So this one is a 20-minute, so you can see the time difference, and it actually has less questions. It has 17 questions. So Marku, you want to talk a little bit about logical processes?
Yeah, this is also, like you said, Kristen, a very popular assessment under the cognitive abilities tools, because it looks at the cause-effect relationships and making sure that the respondent is able to identify those. And just like with the previous test and example that we just saw, the participant, the respondent, gets the instructions and they get to practice one time. So the actual test taking process will not be difficult. They know what type of questions they will be asked. So here they get to practice it, and if they get an incorrect answer, the system will let them know, so they can maybe I misunderstood it. So they are well prepared to take the test. And again, in this particular one, they have 20 minutes to complete 17 questions. When they're ready to go, just like with the previous example, they click on begin and the clock begins ticking.
So here is the report result for understanding logical process. Again, just like Marku said, it has that broken down score of low score, high score. This person scored a 24%. What would that mean, Marku?
Well, again, we need to look at the benchmark score. This one, with this example, we just used the global benchmark, and unfortunately, this individual did not do so well. 24% probably already told that, hey, that's not a very high score. And this individual, because they get the low score, they may be relying on old solutions in solving new problems and drawing some wrong conclusions based on the information they have available. But more importantly, when they are compared against the global benchmark, we get a score of 3%. So that means that compared globally, 97% of individuals who have completed this test scored higher than this individual at 24%.
Okay. All right. So what I also like about this is, again, they can be standalone reports. You can have them just take one at a time. But if you choose to have them take multiple, like maybe 2 or 3 at a time, you can actually also include this executive summary into the report itself. And this one, we had the example, they took all 9 of them. So every test score is listed with their score as well as their benchmark.
Yeah, that's right. And of course, if they took 3 tests, we would only see 3 tests here, but here it combines everything to one easy to reviewable format. You can see where their strengths are, what are the areas that they may have some challenges, and then that use that information, one, to make better hiring decisions, of course, in the context of all the other information that is available to us, or if it's an existing employee, looking at, maybe there are some development needs, or maybe there are some career paths within the organization that is best suited for the individual.
And just kind of before we move on, there was a really good question, Marku. Somebody asked, Philip asked, is there a way to account for test anxiety or learning needs?
Well, I mean, testing anxiety, I remember that being at school.
That would be me.
Yeah, a certain subject gave me some more anxiety. That is part of any test, that some individuals get more nervous. The tool itself cannot determine what the anxiety level is. Certainly, we would like to make sure that the individual has an environment that is ideal for test taking, but also help them prepare kind of, hey, this is what to expect. A lot of times when people don't know what to expect, that creates anxiety. But the tool itself cannot measure the anxiety level. Of course, I mean, I remember if I didn't score so well in a test in school, or when I took this test, frankly, some of the scores I was not eager to share with the world, wish they had been a little bit higher. What I tended to do in those situations is try to make some excuses, but the test is a test. There is no gray area. You get the answer correctly or you get it wrong, and then the scores will reflect those results.
Yeah, it is an analytical assessment. So these raw score tables, I think when I was talking to you before, how these percentages, also this data gives you a lot more insight into how they answered, as well as their abilities as well. So can you talk just about the ones I highlighted for you?
Yeah, so if you remember, I mentioned early in the webinar that we're looking at 2 things. One is the speed and one is the accuracy. So if you look at the first one, abstract logical reasoning, there are 30 questions. And if you look at the third column where it says answered, they answered all 30 questions. And in other words, they answered all 100% of the questions. They had 11 minutes to complete the questionnaire. They use a little bit less, they use 10 minutes and 19 seconds. But out of those 30 questions, they missed a few, so they got a score of 90%. They got 90% of the questions correct. Not a bad score at all. So they did quite well, and they were able to answer all 30 in the allocated time. Now, if I go down a few below that to numerical reasoning, here the person again took the full 9 minutes. And they were not able to answer all of the 42 questions that were asked. They were only able to answer 33 of those, which correlates to 79% completion rate. Out of those, they answered correctly 88% of the 33 that they actually answered. But if we put in the context of all 42, because automatically they did not answer 9 questions at all, which they basically got a wrong score for those. Overall, they got a score of 69%. So this table helps you kind of break down what resulted in that overall score of 69%. Last one I'm going to share is that word association. There, the person answered all 16 questions. And they actually answered them very quickly. They only used 4 minutes and 43 seconds, even though they had possibility to spend 10 minutes answering those. However, they did not get all of them correct. They only got 69% of those 16 questions correctly.
So before we go into benchmarking, there is a question I'm going to try to answer. Marku, you tap onto it. And if still we don't answer your question correctly, just put it in the chat or Q&A and we'll follow up after. But the question was, how does a company know which mental skills are important for their job roles? And I think what we do is there's a little bit of work, pre-work, that is required, meaning you have to look at your own job descriptions that you have, and then once you've established, what the requirements of them are, then we have these descriptions, and we also are here to help you better match the tool to your specific roles. That way, and Marku also mentioned earlier that you can try it, maybe have some, give it to some pilot tests for your employees, run the test and see if that has some application for you to associate with those skills of a job. Is there anything you would add, Marku?
Yeah, I mean, that is the most critical part, but a lot of times our clients actually have a pretty good idea what the job requires in terms of their skill levels and education background and experience. For example, if the job is programming, things like abstract logical reasoning or numerical reasoning or mathematical logical reasoning might be very important. But other ones, for example, we have one called, let me look at it here, spatial reasoning or social reasoning. Those may not be as important. Social reasoning would be much more relevant to individuals who have a lot of interactions with others. For example, trainers and facilitators often take that one, or salespeople use that one. So some of that process of identifying what's relevant really comes into looking at the test a little bit in more detail. One, understand the definitions of what it actually measures. Maybe have a few people in the organization take the test, and going through that process, the selection criteria actually becomes really clearly defined. You can always have the respondent take a couple additional tests that may not, some tests, I'm not sure if that's kind of a gray area test, or I don't know if we should include it. You can always include it. We don't charge more per test, we charge per person. So you can always ask them to take more tests, but all 9 probably would not be relevant, especially when it comes to the things like social or verbal reasoning. In some roles, our clients know that, hey, that is not critical. Some other areas are much more important to ensure that an employee or candidate will succeed in a particular job role.
Thank you, Marku. So Marku had talked a little bit about benchmarking early on. So I presented this example for you so you could really kind of share it with our participants out there, what we mean by normative benchmarks. Yeah, and it actually it's very easy to interpret. If you look at the population, we break it into different groups: 10%, 25, 50, 75, and 90%. And it shows where an individual, where the population scores. Like if you look at the first column, 10% of the population, the bottom 10%, got score of 30%. So if you get 30%, you're in the bottom 10% of the overall population, whatever the benchmark population is. I'm looking at the language there. This looks like it came from Denmark, one of our clients there. If you look at the middle column, 50%, 57% is the mean score for this particular test. So if anybody scores below 50%, that means that they are the bottom half. If they score higher than 50%, they're at the top half of the population. If you score 86%, I'm looking at the bottom row of numbers there on that little visual, you're at the top 10% of the population. So it breaks down the result and gives you more context in which to evaluate the score the individual receives in a particular cognitive ability test. And again, we do have global benchmarking in place, but to get even more valuable information, we do recommend that you establish your own benchmarking within your organization if possible. Yeah, every time an individual in the organization completes the test, they go to that benchmark population. You don't have to use everybody. You can select the individuals who you want to be the benchmark against which you compare the results. It could be everybody. It could be top performers. Some clients even use the bottom performers and want to know what that population look like to have a really more clear understanding what a particular score means compared to the other benchmarks that they have created. And finally, the last thing we just wanted to talk about is high versus low percentages. Now, again, what's great about it is each of those tests gives you clear outcomes and definitions of what a high score versus a low score means. But this one here is about high versus low percentages. Marku, you want to talk about this?
Well, it's actually very straightforward. Somebody gets a high score, they have the strong cognitive abilities in that area, what that test measures, and they are able to perform quicker, easier, smoother. It doesn't require as much mental calories, if you will, not as much mental horsepower. But on the same token, it could also mean that if the job doesn't challenge them, they need to, if they want to be challenged, the job needs to require some mental muscle from them. If it's just kind of a routine work, they may become a little bit of disillusioned, bored, and maybe they kind of even take unnecessary risk because they want to challenge themselves. Of course, if they get a low score, that means that it takes them a little bit longer to learn new things. They may need more information, and it may require more training, more support, more coaching in order for them to succeed in their job. They just need some help in order to do well.
Yeah, I think, just learning about this reasoning tool or the cognitive ability assessment tool and adding it to our FinxS platform, it just reminds me of kind of the breadth and scope of the assessments that we offer. Because, as a DISC trainer as well, we talk about this is not, try not to tell your participants it's not a test, right? Because it's about you as a behavioral inventory, whereas these cognitive ability assessments do something different, and they are considered tests where you do have these high-low scores. So it's a good reminder that we have so many different types of assessment tools available on the FinxS platform. So if you haven't heard of all of them, what can they do, Marku?
Well, they can certainly always contact us and we can provide the help. And one thing I want to kind of mention again is that you can combine the results. Let's say you are looking at a leadership role, or let's say a sales role. Let's say the sales role that you are selling a very complicated product that needs a lot of customization for different unique client needs. You need to figure out things. How do we really tailor to fit what our client or prospect is needing? And at the same time, they have to do certain sales behaviors like prospecting and so forth. You can look at their behavioral style, how comfortable they are with certain sales behaviors, and also combine them with their, let's call it, mental capabilities. Do they have the cognitive abilities to handle the complex issues that the sales situation and their prospect needs require? So you can combine those results together. Of course, you can even bring their sales capacity instrument and look at, do they have the competencies required to succeed in selling? Now you really have a very complete picture of who that person is in terms of their abilities. And then, of course, you always get the access to their educational background, the experience. And now you are really in a position to make much better hiring decisions to ensure you avoid those very expensive and frustrating hiring mistakes that often we make.
Well, thank you, Marku, for joining us today. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Again, if you need to go back and review what we talked about today, this recording will be posted on our Extended DISC YouTube channel. Just give us a day or so. We do have another webinar in March. It is part of the HRCI SHRM 4 Steps to Effective Interaction series. And this one is on step 3. Don't label me, why, and how to identify the main DISC styles of others. If you miss step 1 and 2, don't worry. We recycle and we come back around again. But you can view any of them in any order you want. And that will be on Wednesday, March 30th. 10 a.m. Central Standard Time. So don't forget to register. Thank you guys all for joining us today. Thank you, Marku, and have a wonderful rest of the day.
Thank you, everyone.